Hi, David, they call me MacGyver. A few days ago I did a review on this yard machine chipper shredder, and I didn't really give it a fair review because it's used, and I said that the chipper part just really didn't work very well with unless you use really small limbs. But I got to thinking that maybe the blades are just completely dull, so I'm going to take those apart, or take it apart and sharpen the blades. So hang tight with me and we'll get started on that. Also, because this is a used machine, there's normally a twist knob here. This side is broke out. The other side's just got a 1/2 inch bolt through it, and I'm going to take that out. There's normally a slip pin here, and I just, this has like a bent nail that goes through it to allow the chute to spin up. So your machine's going to be a little different, but you'll get the idea of how to take this apart to be able to sharpen the blades. So there's a pin here and a pin up there. They have hairpins on them. We'll pull the hairpins out, and then after we get the hairpin pulled out, then we have to actually pull the other pin. The hairpin goes through the pin, and then we have to get that pin to come out of the bottom hole there. It goes through that flail guard, so we just pull that pin out, and then we got an upper pin. We'll do the same thing on hairpin, pull it out. Once we get the hairpin out, then we can actually get the upper pin out. And it was a little tougher. It was rusted in there a little bit, so had to do a little tapping on it to get it going. And then after I tapped it, then I was able to grab it with my pliers and actually wiggle it out. So that's just grab it, wiggle it, and it'll come out of there. And wouldn't hurt to put a little lubrication on that pin and when it goes back in. Inside here is what they call the flail guard, and it's kind of stuck, so that really makes it easier if you pull that out first to get into your get your wrench and stuff in there. I ended up taking off the chute first, and then ended up pulling some screws and stuff, and then I decided later that it would have been easier to take that flail guard out of there. So you'll see that how I get that out of there. I take a 2x4 and tap it with a 2x4 to get it loose. Right now we're just taking off the chute, and there's 3 screws on there. So I'm using a 1/2 inch speed wrench made by Craftsman, and it just makes it faster. So it just you just operate it kind of like you would a ratchet on that speed wrench, and you could use a ratchet in a socket or a long extension in a ratchet, but I had the speed wrench and ended up just using it that way. And then there's a screw on the bottom, and really you can just loosen it, and you can kind of maneuver the top 2 studs out of the holes and then slide it off that bottom one. I ended up taking the nut and washer completely off, but I didn't really need to do that. You'll see it when I put it back on how I do it. So that flail is stuck in there, so I'm going to use a 2x4. Oh, there we go. Popped it out. It's actually a flail guard, not a flail. So what I'm going to do in here is I'm putting a 3/16 Allen wrench in the bolt head on the outside, and then I'm using my 1/2 inch speed wrench on the inside on the nut. And at first you'll have to just turn the 1/2 inch nut on the inside. It's a fiber lock nut, and there's a lock washer behind it. And then once you get it going, and I've got a lot of crud in the heads of those Allens, so I had to pick it out. But once you get your nut started to move, then you can actually move the Allen wrench on the outside to kind of speed the process up a little bit. And I'll leave a link in the description for the speed wrench. And there's 2 screws on this blade, and you need to pay attention to how you actually take it off, because the sharp blade side goes down and it's beveled away from the flail. So bevel is on the bottom, and it points away from the point of it is away from the flail. Anyway, and there's 2 of these blades on this flail. As it spins around, it hits your limb as you're putting it in there. So here's the blade, and you can see there's a beveled side there, and it really, honestly, it's got a little bit of roundness on it, but it's fairly sharp. But we'll see if sharpening up is going to make a big difference or not. Getting the second blade off now. So we're getting the second blade off, and again, there's just 2 3/16 hex head screws that you use an Allen wrench on, and then 1/2-inch wrench on the inside. It's so much easier when that flail guard is out of there too, to get your hand in there. There's not a lot of room, and a ratchet with a socket seems to be probably the easiest. It seems to stay on the head pretty good. So there we go. Okay, I got the second blade off, and it's about the same as the first one. It's still fairly sharp, but it does have a little bit of roundness on the edge. So we'll sharpen it up and see how we can make this thing cut a little better. So I'm using a 4.5-inch grinder with a cutoff wheel because it's nice and flat, and that gives me a perfect angle or perfect surface for running that thing across. If you use a regular grinding wheel, sometimes they're rounded off, and I wanted to make sure it was perfectly flat. You'd want to just keep working on it, and just it doesn't take off as much as a grinder does it on the edge, but at least we're getting a nice, smooth, flat surface. You just want to take all the imperfections out and get it down to a tip, and then after you've worked all the smoothness out, you can turn it over and you can actually hit the back side just to make sure it's flat, and you're not taking a lot off on the back, just a little tiny bit. And then we'll get the next one and do the same thing. And you want to try to take the equal amounts off of both blades, and that's because they kind of balance that flail in there, and you want to make sure you don't have one that's got a whole bunch taken off of it with the other one not. So just keep in mind that you're trying to keep them so that they're equal, and you're not taking a lot off of one and not as much off the other. Just keep it flat, same angle that was there before, smooth it out, and then after you've got that done, you turn it over and just smooth the back out. And it'll sharpen it up. It'll make it a little sharper than it was before. Like I said, it wasn't that terrible before. So it's actually looking pretty good there. Nice and sharp edge on it. And we will put these back into the chipper, and keep in mind again how it goes. The sharp edge goes down and the bevel is away from the flail. You put both screws in, and that'll keep them lined up at the holes. Make sure you put your lock washers on first, and then your fiber lock nut, and then you can hold the head of that screw with your 3/16 Allen wrench, and then you can either use box end, open end, or a speed wrench, or you can actually use a ratchet with a short socket. There's not a whole lot of room to get in there. If you try to use a deep socket, it just won't go in there. So whatever works best for you. I actually started with my speed wrench, and after I got going, I wanted to try a ratchet and socket, so I got my ratchet and socket, and seems to go even a little bit faster with the short socket and a ratchet wrench. So whatever you've got will do the job, and it doesn't really matter, just as long as you get them snugged up. You want to get a good tension on those. Don't let them be loose and rattling. Get a good tight fit on them. So I got both blades back in. Now we're going to put the chute back on. So I'm taking the washer and the 1/2-inch nut, and I'm just putting it loosely on the bottom, and then I'll slip the chute back over it. There's actually a slot in that bottom one, and then you work it around the other two and put the other two 1/2 inch lock nuts on them, and then we'll get those tightened up. And if you had a ratchet with a long extension, you could use that as well. I ended up on this just using my speed wrench, which, you know, didn't take a whole lot longer than going and trying to chase down my extension. My speed wrench works pretty slick. But if you do have a longer extension, you can get it in there a little quicker. You could even use a impact, like a cordless impact driver with an adapter on it and put the extension on there and whip them out a whole lot faster. I just figured I'd do it the old school way here and get them tightened up. And then after I get these tight, you see I'm getting a good snug fit on those. Don't want them to rattle loose. Then we'll put the flail back in, or the flail guard, excuse me, and you just get it in there and line up that top hole first, run your pin through, and then after you get your pin through, of course, then you put the hairpin in the pin, and that'll keep it from vibrating back out. You wiggle it around a little bit, get it through, and get the bottom, I'll get my hairpin in there, and then we'll get the bottom pin and shove it through and get the hole lined up, and we'll have her ready to test run, see how it goes. Get that hairpin in there, tap it down there, we're good to go. Now we'll just drop the chute back down, and I don't have the knob on the left side, it's all busted out, so I'm just going to put my 1/2 inch bolt and washer on the other side and snug her up with my impact driver, and now we'll do a test run. Well, there you have it. It is what it is. It chips them up. It's just not real fast on the limbs. It does spit them out, chop them up, and after sharpening them, it seems to be a little bit better than what it was before. But it works awesome as a shredder. The chipper to me is a little bit weak, but you saw how it chipped, and you make your own decision. I want to thank you again for watching. Hope you'll subscribe to my channel, click the bell icon, and anytime I do a new video, you'll be notified. Again, thanks again for watching. You have a great day.